A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is the newest series in the Game of Thrones universe, set around 100 years before the original Game of Thrones series. It follows the adventures of its main characters Dunk and Egg in Westeros, in a much smaller universe than we've ever seen before. After finishing the first season, I was really inspired to make something, specifically a book cover, because the stuff out there already is pretty standard, either inspired by the series or really text heavy. So what if we made something for the good guys and the bad guys? So let's start with the good guys, so Duncan the Tall and Egg. I already had a rough idea of what I wanted to do for this. I know I wanted his shield in it, some grass, and it's to resonate with his personality. First of all, I always like to start off with my type roughly laid out, which is I know where to keep clear of, so I just don't put anything really detailed in these zones. And then I quickly just bring in all my elements and start scattering around the page, just so I can get a rough idea of what I want to comp. He's a hedge knight, so he's always going to be in an open space in a green field by a tree and sat next to a campfire. That's how he lives his life, so that's what I want to translate on his personal book cover. As you can see, I'm just dragging in loads of random images at the moment, getting them roughly in place, doing nothing special with them, just getting the vibe right. Now that I've finished my rough scamp with all of the items that I need, I just like to sit back and review and see if I'm happy with the direction.
I'm happy with the overall concept, but there's just some things missing. There needs to be some more personal elements, something that is a bit more Easter eggy to the series.
Now with a bit more direction, I'm just going to go back into the scene and tidy a few things up. So I'll turn off all of my layers and start from the base and build up. As you can see, I'm just going to be playing with all the curves and just a few different brush opacities just to make things a bit more integrated with each other. Things that were really jarring in this was making things integrate with grass. Whenever I've worked with grass before, nothing ever looks natural because shards are going all different directions and you just got to wing it when it comes to this. I found these really good brushes on Envato so I could bring in some fake strands to make things look like they're overlaying a bit more. Now when I just started looking at lighting, I knew I wanted to be lit from the top right. It feels like the most organic spot to be working from. So I've just started roughly putting in some shadows to make it feel like it's a bit more of a scene rather than a flat piece of art. So let's do a final review before I tidy this piece of art up. I can already see some things I don't like. It's really busy in the top right, you can't even see the type anymore. The direction of light is right, but I just need to add some more contrast in there. And then as for the colouring, it's a bit muddy in areas and there's just no interest at the bottom of the page. I think I might add some little Easter eggs in there, like Penny Tree's coin, and then maybe the egg in the bottom left corner in the pan. I'm going to go straight in with adding the coin. That feels like the easiest thing to be adding to this artwork. And I think it'll make a big impact for all the fans that know the end scene. Just doing some integration with cutting out pieces of wood so it feels like it's really wedged in there rather than just sitting on the surface. Highlights and things like this are really important because they really make the areas a bit pop. rather than just integrated with the scene. It makes you really look at it a bit more. Now I'm just going to go over the rest of the scene and tweak some lighting and some highlights just to make it feel a bit more realistic. Every time I kept going back to another item, I realised that my cutout wasn't crisp enough or the asset wasn't crisp enough. So I kept going back in and sharpening and just doing as many effects on it as possible to integrate it into the scene. Even adding little highlights and shadows and the little bolts just made it feel a bit more like a photo rather than random assets pushed together. I really wanted to add another light source to this piece of work because at the moment everything was just coming from the top right. So I decided to brighten up the fire in the bottom left so it gave our shield a bit more dynamism. Time to add our next Easter egg, which is the loaf of bread that they share at their breakfast together. I really wanted to get this into the scene because it felt very important to the egg that you had to have both together. You can't just have an egg frying in a pan. It took me a while to get the lighting right on the egg because everything just kept going either blue or yellow and it just wasn't feeling right in the scene. More shading to integrate it into our lighting. I was trying to go for more soft blacks rather than really harsh colours because it was making it feel too harsh. Now that I'm happy with everything, I just start looking at the overall effects, bringing in different tones, playing with the curves and the levels just to get the right vibe. I really thought the shadow of the tree needed to be brought out a bit more, just to contribute to the storyline. And I think we're just about done for our first piece of artwork. I'm really happy with how this turned out, with the colours. It just feels very organic, very natural, and very Sir Duncan the Tool. And now it's time to look at the Targaryens. I'm going to follow the same sort of theming from the first piece of art with the shield and the scene from the most iconic part of the show, the Trial of Seven. So again, I want to set up my basic layout with the text, just so I can get some guardrails where not to put anything important. I start bringing in all my base elements to get the right angle. For some reason it took me many attempts just to get a rough outline of this shield, but that needs to be the hero of the art. I knew I really wanted to contrast Sir Duncan the Tool's piece of art, so I wanted my art to be very moody, dark and a bit more grey. I brought in an armour set at the front to symbolise the defeat of the battle, and it also gave me a nice base for my type to sit on. I started bringing atmospherics in a bit early for this because I feel like it's really going to heavily rely on the smokes, the light and all the debris. So let's review our rough mock-up. I can already see it's a bit dull in places, there's no light source or just nothing capturing me. Yes, there's no effects on it yet, but I can just tell it's not going the right way. I think I need to add some more horses in the background or just something to pick up some lighting so we can see what's going on. With all of that in mind, let's do some refining. First of all, I'm going to go in and just start relighting some bits and pieces with some colour just so it's not as grey anymore. I do this to the horses as well, because then we can see their tail detailing a bit more. Just doesn't look like a black blob on the screen. The orange feels like a really important colour on this piece of art, just so we don't stay in that grey area. The orange is going to give us such a big boost and give us something to play with when we're lighting all of our elements. Like already, I can start lighting up our shield with oranges and yellows to make it feel a bit more powerful and the centre of attention. It is also important to keep some of those cool tones so we have a bit of contrast so the whole thing doesn't feel too warm and fuzzy. This is a bit of a boring part of the job where I need to go in and detailing dirt, but it's really important to get that final integrated dug in the ground effect. Now I'm happy with the detailing of the soil and the shield, I wanted to go in and start doing some rough shading. This sort of just helped me with the direction of light and how to add drama to the scene. I've decided to add a really bright burst of light behind my shield. It felt a bit more heroic and it just gave us something to look at in the scene. It also meant I could do more dramatic lighting on the shield so it felt a bit more Targaryen, a bit more powerful. It's really important I need to go through and do some detailing on the shield and the armour at the front, as these are my two key elements. One of the most important things with the knight at the front is that my type remains legible, so I need to keep him as dark as possible whilst also retaining his detail. I'm subtly lighting up the armour at the front with a rim light of orange, but also retaining that cold blue at the front just to give me a bit of contrast between the two worlds. I think for this scene in particular, I'm going to lean heavy on the overlays and the effects and the flames to really immerse us in the battle. You can definitely just keep piling on the smoke with this sort of scene, because every time you add, it just adds another layer of depth. At this point, our shield is just looking a bit too plain and clean, so I went in with a lot of blood splats and mud just to make it feel like it's midway through battle. I kept adding highlights and shadows as I went, and it just made it feel even more authentic. So let's review our artwork now. I'm really happy with the sky in this one now. It really draws your attention to the middle of the page, but there's definitely something lacking with this. There's not enough contrast, and I think it needs to be brighter in the middle overall to really see that dragon sigil. Overall, I just need to add some more atmospherics and detail just because it's a bit plain at the moment, especially without the type over the top. Right, let's start to add some action to our scene, a bit more smoke in the background to make it feel like a bit more of a lived-in universe. I started by darkening all the edges as well, then we really focus on this bright spot in the middle. A lot of this refinement stage is just building detail in all of the main areas, so adding more mud, adding more blood, and just more smoke overall. In a scene as simple as this, I think detail is more important than composition. I think deciding to add texture to the shield rather than using the base image was a really good shout because it made it feel like it had just gone through a battle rather than just coming in on a horse. It also just made it feel a bit more of a high quality asset because it is quite pixelated. One thing I like to do when I'm doing these pieces of art, I like to put a black and white filter over the top of the whole image because it really helps you see where the bright spots are or the dark spots, or if there's just a lack of contrast overall. Finally, I'm going to go in with a camera raw filter just to pick up some more detail and play with the colouring, just to give it that final boost. And that's the second piece of artwork, a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Trial of the Seven, inspired by the Targaryens. Here are the final artworks side by side. Comment below if you're a fan of House Targaryen or Sir Duncan the Tall.